What's the most creative way of driving someone crazy discreetly? Yeah, alas, I'm evil. Edit. Wow. This is great. I'm reading every one of them. April Fool's Day is gonna be so peeping wonderful. Just hope I don't know any secret redditors. Edit 2. Keep them up, votes coming. Front page. When I worked at a banquet hall in a hotel, I had a manager who we'll call Steve, who treated everyone like Speep, calling us stupid, calling us out on things not even the managers above him cared about, and just generally being an asshole. One day he puts this pissy memo on the bulletin board about not eating leftover food. None of the other managers cared about this, and it actually went in the garbage if nobody ate it. But instead of signing his name, he put banquet management. Well, as a joke I scratched that out and wrote Steve. A couple minutes later, he walks over to the bulletin board, sees this, and starts screaming, "Who wrote this?" And then runs to his boss down the hall and starts complaining, and the guy just doesn't know what to say and shrugs. Well, the entire staff saw this and thought it was hilarious, so we start writing Steve on everything. Over the next few weeks Steve gets more and more pissed and launches an investigation saying that he's analyzing the handwriting. At this point he still thinks it's just one person, despite the fact that the entire staff is in on this joke. He never really figured it out, and I'm not sure how crazy it drove him, but he did get fired for drinking on the job. Photocopy a paperclip 100 or so times, out them back in the drawer so whenever it's used, the documents have a paperclip on it. My office went nuts. Took it apart trying to find the paperclip stuck in the machine. Even called in a technician. Lols were had. Glitter. Everybody hates glitter. I came up with this prank a couple years ago. Every morning, I would take some glitter which conveniently came in little vials and pour some into my roommate's pants pockets while he was out of the room. Usually I could tell by his morning routine which pants he was going to wear for the day. But even if I got it wrong, those other pants would be primed for the next time he wore them. All day he, like everybody else on earth, would put his hands in his pockets to get his phone, keys, or just casually, thereby transferring a little glitter to his hands. He would then touch his shirt, pants, and or face at some point. For 2 weeks people would tell him that he had glitter on him, but he was never able to figure out where it was coming from. After going on a rant about how confused and utterly crazed by the sudden appearance of glitter everywhere he goes, I came out and told him that it was me. I could have easily done this for a lot longer, since he never figured out that the glitter was in his pockets, even though I became very liberal in the amount I poured in. This one's buried, and I've posted it before, but it's worthy of this thread. I'll give a shorthand version. Dude at work was complaining that his spoons were slowly disappearing from the lunchroom. He had brought 6 to work, and he was down to 2. Everyone else in his lab hatched this plan. Every time someone sent him an email, at the bottom, in white text _IE, invisible unless highlighted, everyone would write spoon 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 spoon. We all did this for several weeks. He had a Gmail account, and that's when he started losing his mind. Every website he visited had ads for spoons and flatware. He thought Google was reading his mind. Your lab is absolutely brilliant. I hope they are working on cancer, and not lipstick for ocelots or some such silly speep. Shall we try to figure out how to cure cancer? Nah, peep that. Let's see how many fruit pastels it takes to choke a kestrel. Frankie Boyle. Not someone did to me on purpose, but one that happened nonetheless. At my old rental I had with my sister, for about a couple of months I kept hearing ringing noises that's similar to an old phone ringing every time I would walk through hallway, kitchen, lounge room or dining room. Or also when I listened to music on the stereo in the lounge room. For the months it drove me crazy. I would be walking and hear, stop to listen, and lo and behold nothing. I never caught on to how come it stopped every time I looked for it. I thought it was a ghost humoring myself, or that neighbor's peeping phone kept ringing. So one day I was looking for something in kitchen, and I look on top of the tallest cupboard and find this moth-earth peeping clock. This piece of speep had one of those old school bell and ringer on it. Vibrations from walking/stereo made it ring. Fourth peeping month that bastard drove me insane. No one believed me about the ringing. Turns out my mother bought my sister the clock and sat it on the top of the cupboard where it got pushed back where you couldn't see it. So yeah. Basically, hide an item that will make annoying noise where you can't find it. In the wall. When we got our house built, some son of a bitch dropped his watch while they were building the wall to my bedroom. He had his alarm set for 330 am, and every hour it would do the beep to let you know it rolled over. That drove me insane. Friend of mine lost his watch in his bedroom. Every day it beeped twice at noon. So he had a bunch of us come over every day just before noon and point at where we thought the sound was coming from. We found it on the third day. It was inside his trumpet case. Edit. There's some reference here I don't get. To do with an echo. Based on the replies. Edit 2. Oh yeah, I wrote his watch twice. My bad me culpa me maxima culpa. My favorite was the person that sewed someone's sleeve button a little closer every few weeks, so the guy felt his arms were swelling. Typically the prank works better if you do it to just one shirt sleeve. So they think one arm is swelling, but when they compare it to their other arm there isn't a difference. With the amount of exercise one of my arms gets over the other, I'd think it was plausible. Try to open a bag of chips quietly for an hour. And then proceed to try and quietly eat the chips. Open it, use scissors, eat it, put it in your mouth and let your saliva break it down into mush, and then swallow and repeat. This is how I ate food throughout high school. I take it, you hate when other people can hear you urinate or defecate? I just love those perfect speeps where it hits the water before you pinch it. No splash. 10 out of 10. Script an alarm for 13 minutes past the hour that plays the default system error sound with no visual feedback. I would intentionally mispronounce lasagna all the time in front of my brother, pronouncing it lasagne. He'd correct me every time then eventually gave up. Then one day he says, "Want lasagne for lunch?" To which I reply it's pronounced lasagna. I've never seen his eyes twitch so much. A coworker of mine used the Annoyatron on another coworker for weeks. It's a small device $half size that makes a quiet high-pitched beep at random intervals. It has a magnet on it, so you can stick it under a chair or hide it in some pretty hard to find locations. Sometimes he'd turn it off for a few days or a week only to turn it back on when the victim had let his guard down. He would move it all around the office. The guy started getting desperate after a few weeks of this. He had maintenance come in and take the thermostat apart. He looked in the ceiling tiles and air vents. The icing on the cake was when the prankster put the Annoyatron in the poor guy's car. He used to leave it unlocked during the workday. He thought the feds were after him. I worked for about 6 months transition job while I looked for something better at a sales job, and had a manager who was this old guy who should have retired decades ago. He smoked many packs a day, wore boots, and was way past his prime. I remember he was always yelling at us and all of us whippersnappers couldn't stand him and laughed behind his back. I finally found a great gig and knew I would never return, so planned my exodus for a particular Friday. I drafted my immediate resignation, which would show in his email Monday am, and when he left early that Friday I installed an Annoyatron in his computer. I took it apart and installed it on his motherboard. Only an it guy would be able to find it, and they were out of state. I also informed 2 other guys, who were sticking around a few more weeks, what I was doing, where to find it, and how to replace the battery when it died. I left 5 new batteries in one of their desks. Apparently, the guy went nuts. It was slow. He'd have team meetings in his office once a week, and the thing was chirping all the time. The guys that I recruited in my plan said the meetings were torture because they had to contain their laughter as this guy twitched when it went off, and they could see him breaking down mentally. For weeks they could see him in his office cursing and yelling at his computer. He even got to the point where he would either turn his country music up loud to wash out the sound, or simply not even use his office. It even came out his mistake was to let the office know, so they removed it the day prior to their arrival and reinstalled when they left and just thought he was nuts. Best vengeance ever. War boots. Why is that worthy of note? Did he wear pirate boots or something? Whilst my friend and co-worker took a break one day, I plugged a wireless mouse into the back of his computer. For the past 2 weeks I occasionally jog the mouse, and he's slowly being driven insane by it. You could also randomly change the sensitivity in the mouse every few days after they have adjusted. Change double click speed for major dickiness. Make the cursor show a tail, but a really short one, so it's hardly noticeable. I just emptied a small bag of Skittles into my dad's massive bag of M&Ms. Always a good time. One delightful day, a co-worker and I switched a fridge door which was designed with internal handles for just such a decision from opening on the left to opening on the right. Took about 10 minutes, and a Leatherman to do it. Next day, everyone comes in, tries to get creamer, and we delight in the mischief. Everyone handled it with varying degrees of aplomb, shook the fridge a bit, tried a few times, finally noticed the hinges, and went to the other side. Shrugs were had. Peeps were not given. The boss finally arrives, gets a cup of coffee, and goes for the creamer. Grabs the door on the left, and pulls. Hard. Coffee everywhere. But this guy, he knows he's right. He's always right. He's the boss. Sets down his mug, swears a little, grabs the handle again, still the left one. Mind, braces his peeping leg on the counter, and pulls so peeping hard. The fridge comes out from the wall about 3 feet. Everything in the fridge, completely tossed about, and we, watching, eyes wide in amused horror, desperately choking back our paroxysms of laughter. In walks one of the salesmen, blabbing on his Bluetooth, gets coffee, opens the fridge with ease, notices Peeps peeped up in the fridge, looks at the boss with a genuinely puzzled look, shrugs, gets his creamer and wanders off. The boss swore like a sailor, stormed into his office, and slammed the door, stewed a bit, then stormed out of the office. He didn't come back for a week. TL. Doctor, I'm laughing so peeping hard at the memory of this. It took me half an hour to type it out. Something I did to my boss. On top of the refrigerator at work is where we keep things like paper plates, paper towels, and plastic utensils. Every day, I'd take one of the plastic utensils and place it in the gap at the top of the fridge that's between the freezer door and the rest of the fridge, so every time he'd opened it, the utensil would fall on the floor. After about a week of doing this, he moved the bag of utensils from the top of the fridge to the cupboard next to it. So, I started putting 2 utensils in the gap. He finally got everybody together and asked that we stop putting things on top of the fridge. So, with absolutely nothing on top of the fridge now, I put a whole bunch of utensils in the gap. The next day, my boss opened the freezer and completely lost his speep. Pro tip: making your boss lose their speep can be a very bad career move. The penny trick works great. Start by leaving a penny on your friend's desk, chair, coat pocket, places where you would expect to find a penny. Leave one a day for a while, varying the locations. Then start leaving them in shoes, socks, bed, pillowcase. At first they will ignore the penny, but eventually it will bug them. Took my roommate 3 weeks until he stroked out one night after finding a penny embedded in his bar of soap. I highly recommend this. Drives them peeping mad. Edit: I wanted to add go nuts with this. His final straw was the soap, but I really wanted to start putting them in his car and get a co-worker of his to play along and start leaving them around his desk. I'm upset my plans fell short. Somewhere a long time ago, there was a thread that was how you would screw with someone if you had 500,000. One of the top comments reads something like, "Get it all changed into pennies. Then slowly, start placing pennies around the person you would like to annoy. At first one a week, then once a day, and increasing from there. Pennies lining their dashboard. Fill their fridge with pennies. At some point, their mental health would start to decline. And eventually, all of this stress would cause a stroke. When they wake up, their hospital room will be completely lined in pennies. You are the first one to visit, wearing a suit made entirely of pennies. And as they realize they are going insane, and succumb to the stress of their final panic attack, the one that would kill them then and there, you would look them in the eyes, hold their hands, and place a single quarter into them. If anyone could find the original, I would be highly indebted.